Welcome everybody to Community Habitat Certification. We are going to talk all about how you as a community can help preserve wildlife, support wildlife in your neighborhoods that you live in. And the presentation tonight is going to go over a little bit of everything. We're going to go over who is New Jersey Audubon, why should we as communities care about backyard habitat. We're going to go over the brief overview of how habitat certification works and how you can get started on that. And then go over some case studies of different homeowners associations have used, as well as the details for our upcoming spring 2022 Garden for Wildlife program. I'll just introduce myself. My name is Lindsay Gafford, and I'm also here presenting with Kristen Hawk, and we work for New Jersey Audubon. New Jersey Audubon has been around since 1897. We are an environmental nonprofit that serves the state of New Jersey, and one really common thing that gets confused is that we are not associated with National Audubon. We are our own nonprofit, and we work exclusively within the state of New Jersey. We have 4 nature centers and over 20 unstaffed sanctuaries in the state of New Jersey. And we are made up of 6 departments: research, I work for stewardship, Kristen works for education, we have the development department, government relations, and finance. And we are also made up of you, our members and our volunteers. We can't do it without you. The first question that we want to answer is, why should we garden for wildlife? Now, I'm going to show you this picture of a community, a suburban community. The biggest reason in my book to garden for wildlife is for the benefit of wildlife. You can see that there are some forested areas in this property, and then there are some houses nestled in between. And all of the houses pretty much have a green lawn and maybe not so many other types of plants growing in there. You can kind of see if you look real closely that it's mostly lawn space. And essentially what we have here is a classic example of habitat fragmentation. And I'm going to go over that on the next slide. But I just want you to notice how we have some patches of forest, which are considered high value habitats. And then in between everything, we have some grass lawns, which would be considered very low value habitat. Now, how does this, creating a wildlife habitat benefit wildlife? Well, as we said, this picture depicts habitat fragmentation. There are areas of lower connectivity, and our goal is to increase the connectivity. So we want to take sensitive landscape areas like the second picture here and create buffer zones and increase movement between those 2 parcels. It essentially allows wildlife to move around better, safer. They don't have to cross as many roads. They can use resources that are right there instead of have to go searching for them, and that may put them in danger. So our goal from a wildlife standpoint is to improve the quality of the habitat, even in the spaces that we are living. But it doesn't just have to benefit wildlife. The kind of secret that I want everybody to know is that it can benefit you as well. And so this isn't just to benefit wildlife. If you were looking for another reason, it can save you a lot of money. The typical native plantings, they can reduce or eliminate the need for fertilization. They reduce the maintenance cost because native plants are typically a little more hardy. And it can increase the property value of your property to add a nice landscaping design. Also, additional plant material can reduce noise. Working together to create a wildlife habitat with your neighbors builds a sense of community, and gardening is shown to reduce stress. So there are tons of reasons why you might want to jump into a project like this. Now I'm going to pass it over to Kristen Hawk. She is going to tell you all about a certified wildlife habitat and how you can get your property certified.
Thanks, Lindsay. So to become a certified wildlife habitat, you have to provide resources for the survival of wildlife, and they include food, water, cover, places to raise young, and use sustainable practices. For food, you'd want to provide native plants that help wildlife eat the leaves, seeds, berries, nuts, fruits, nectar, and sap. And for the food resource, you'd want to provide at least 3 different options of food for wildlife. So we have a monarch caterpillar eating milkweed, and also monarch butterflies drinking the nectar from goldenrod, and a bluebird eating some holly berries. And there's also a eastern box turtle eating some prickly pear, which is New Jersey's only native cactus. So one great reason for providing plants are that plants are the foundation of the food web in any ecosystem, and plants attract insects, which are the next level of the food web. 90% of the insects that rely on plants can only survive on plants which they have co-evolved. So most of us know about the monarch and milkweed connection, where monarch caterpillars can only eat milkweed plants within the milkweed family. And if we don't have milkweed, then we won't have monarchs. So planting milkweed is really helpful for our, it's the only way to sustain our monarch population. Other examples of food can be supplemental feeders. So bird feeders, squirrel feeders, hummingbird feeders, and butterfly feeders. So again, 3 resources of food total, 3 sources of food total. That bottom picture shows exactly what you would need. It has 2 tube feeders and a suet feeder. So if you just have that on your property, then you would meet your food requirements for becoming a certified wildlife habitat. Or you can have 2 native plants and a hummingbird feeder, or 2 tube feeders and a native plant. So you could have a combination of any of the native plants and supplemental feeders. And when we say provide food for wildlife, we specifically mean for pollinators and songbirds. So we are not encouraging you to feed raccoons or possums or fox, and that will create a pest problem and not healthy for those wild mammals. So when you are feeding wildlife, stick strictly with the pollinators and songbirds. Water, so water is the next source. You want to provide at least 1 source of water. A bird bath is usually the most common. A lot of people have bird baths. So that would be all that you need for this resource. Maybe you have a pond or a lake or other natural bodies of water running through your property, like a stream or a seasonal pool that fills up in the springtime. You could dig your own small pond. That would be great for frogs and turtles. Butterfly puddling area. So this is an area that you would remove any grass, scratch up the soil, and have it be a bit moist. And the butterflies can drink the minerals that come up through the soil. A rain garden, a spring. So there's a lot of different options for providing water for wildlife. And if you live on an apartment balcony, you can just put out a small, shallow dish of water. That would be great for pollinators like these bees here. So you want to be able to put some stones in a shallow dish so that the insects have a spot to land on and so that they don't drown. This is a great option for smaller, smaller spaces. Cover is the next resource. So cover so that you could provide a place for prey to hide and for predators to hide so that they can be successful, or maybe the prey will get away. But it's important to provide for both. So that could be wooded areas, ground cover, rock pile or wall, roosting box, dense shrubs or thickets, evergreens, or a brush or log pile that is shown here on one of our New Jersey Audubon properties. And we have seen snakes and some birds going in and out of these log piles. So they definitely enjoy the bugs that they can find in there and eat the bugs. Places to raise young, you'd want to provide at least 2 places to raise young. That could be in mature trees where birds can build nests on branches, or even putting up nest boxes like these owls are in. Host plants for caterpillars, dead trees or snags that also can be used for building nests, dense shrubs or thickets, water garden or pond, or a burrow. And when you provide places to raise young, think about different life stages. So for example, like we've mentioned, the caterpillar monarch needs milkweed. So if you want monarch butterflies, you would need to provide milkweed so that the caterpillars have a place to grow. Same for toads or frogs. If you want toads or frogs on your property, you would need a place for their young, the tadpoles, to grow. So you'd want a water garden or a pond on your property. And using sustainable practices. So reducing water is a really great way to be sustainable by putting down mulch, using drip irrigation, collecting water through rain barrels. Keeping cats indoors is really helpful for wildlife. Cats are great. I have 2 cats of my own. They are strictly indoors so that it's safer for them and safer for wildlife. So by providing all of these resources, you can become a certified wildlife habitat, which is a program through National Wildlife Federation and New Jersey Audubon. You would get a paper certificate in the mail, which is on the left. And then if you were interested in having a sign to put up in your garden to recognize your accomplishment, there is this beautiful metal sign that you can get up that's waterproof, that you can order and put up in your garden. So why become a certified wildlife habitat? In 2012, a group of students went to one neighborhood and they studied certified wildlife habitats, and then they went next door to study the non-certified properties. And they were able to determine that certified wildlife habitats provide more abundant and higher quality habitat for wildlife compared to non-certified yards. So I think that's really an important point, because once you do become certified, you're being recognized for providing the best resources for our wildlife as compared to people who have not certified, because you are providing food, water, cover, and places to raise young. And you could certify any outdoor space, home, workplace, homeowners association, which is why we are all here today, a library, school or university, apartment, rooftop or balcony, a patio, place of worship. So really any outdoor space that you could provide the resources mentioned can become a certified wildlife habitat. And individual properties can become certified as well as communities. So this might be something of interest to people who live in HOAs if you would want to certify your community as a wildlife habitat. And this would include certifying individual properties as well as educating members about how to garden for wildlife and creating different gardens around the properties. It's based on a population scale and point system. And so it's very easy and laid out, and I'm happy to help you walk you through that process. We have 5 certified community wildlife habitats in New Jersey, and there's 10 registered communities, which means that they are working towards certification. So they have gone on and registered their community, and they are adding up their points as they go along, as they certify individual properties, as well as provide education and outreach to the community. So now I'll talk about a community that New Jersey Audubon worked closely with to help them with an issue they were dealing with. So several residents of Panther Valley HOA attended a New Jersey Audubon webinar, and they asked New Jersey Audubon Stewardship Department to assist with the restoration project of a detention basin. And this is located at the Alamucci Municipal Building Firehouse Complex. So we partnered with them, and for our part, on New Jersey Audubon's part, we designed the restoration actions, presented it to the committee, so the township committee, and successfully wrote a Xerces Society grant and was able to obtain over 750 native wildflowers, grasses, and seeds to help plant at the restoration site. For the township, they organized the labor and prepped the site costs. They developed and kept maintenance plan for the basin, and they gathered community support. And the project is mutually beneficial, so it benefited New Jersey Audubon, the township, and wildlife. It improved habitat and ecosystem services, offers recreation and educational opportunities to the community, and promotes ecological stewardship, environmental ethics, and offers a sense of pride for the community for making an unsightly area now really beautiful and useful. So you could see the before and after photos. This picture was taken in different times of the year a bit, but you can see flowers blooming and how lush the after picture is on the right. So providing a lot better resources like cover, places to raise young, food, and even water at the bottom of the basin for wildlife. And Charlie, who's the director of open space of Alamucci, was really happy with the turnout and the project. He said, "We turned a mundane mandated detention basin into a recreational and educational opportunity site comprised of wetlands ecosystem at the bottom and a pollinator garden project on top." And they also offer a bench and kiosk for visitors so that they can sit and enjoy the wildlife who visit and also learn about the project. So when you live in an HOA and you want to change some of the landscaping practices around the properties, it's helpful to have vision and goals. So a vision could possibly be to create wildlife-friendly bylaws that residents can present to their board with the goal of managing the property in a way that's aesthetically pleasing as well as environmentally conscious. So it's great to come together and think of the vision that you want, and then create the action and goals that you want to meet. So one could be create or join your HOA's landscaping committee, and this way you would be able to preserve and enhance the community's natural areas, educate residents about the importance of native plants and gardening for pollinators, create a thriving local ecosystem that includes healthy soils, waterways, drinking water, and landscapes, reducing lawns, which then would reduce mowing, leaf blowing, and overuse of chemicals, and overall increase resident happiness. Also for your landscape committee, you would want to conduct a survey of the property. So determine which is part of the HOA, which is private, and which is public utilities, and then create a plan for each of the areas that are managed by the HOA. You can create new policies. Examples can be planting only native plants, which are best for wildlife and best for, suited for our area because they co-evolved here. And they are used to our conditions, our water conditions, our temperatures. Create an approved plant list that would include native plants. Mulch leaves instead of blowing, unless you want to blow the parking lots or walkways, because leaves can be slippery. So thinking about safety as well. But if it's in an area that they don't need to be blown, maybe mulching the leaves so that it's providing nutrients back into the soil. Use chemicals only when absolutely necessary. So think about other ways that you can handle issues like invasive species, maybe if you were able to use manual removal or other ways to remove invasives. You would also want to develop an invasive species control plan, which would include replacing non-native trees and pulling vines and figuring out how to reduce and eliminate the invasive species on the HOA properties. And you also want to involve community. So options can be volunteer days to work together maintaining the gardens. So you get to know each other, you get to have a sense of pride by working together. And an added bonus is reducing landscape costs. So if you're reducing landscape costs, then maybe you can utilize that money in a different area, like providing education opportunities for your HOA members. Putting in a kiosk with information about the native plants and wildlife that visit can also create brochures to hand out to residents about the gardens and pollinators. Maybe create a Facebook group for residents to share photos of the gardens and wildlife visitors. This could also be a great place to share articles, or maybe if somebody is just feeling like they want to do some gardening, they can post, say, like, hey neighbors, I want to be out gardening from 8 to 10 tomorrow morning if anyone would want to join me. So again, creating that sense of community, sending out a monthly newsletter with garden tips, meet your wildlife neighbor, things like that. And even connecting with your local New Jersey Audubon Nature Center, and we can come out and lead walks and nature programs around the gardens. And coming up in a few months, we will have our second round of our wildlife gardening series, 8-part webinar series that will be on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. starting in March. So those are the dates there, March 1st through April 19th. At the end of each presentation, we will have a question and answer. So you get to ask your questions directly to our experts that will be presenting from New Jersey Audubon. And we will also have 3 in-person field trips. So we all appreciate, education, and doing virtual webinars is great, but being in person is really where you get to have that hands-on experience. And so we will be offering 3 field trips in North Jersey, Central Jersey, and South Jersey. So we can meet together and go over some of the things that we learned online. So some of the programs that we will be offering are certifying your wildlife habitat, providing resources for pollinators and songbirds, learning about invasive species ID and management, planting native plants of New Jersey, and developing a design plan for your garden, and a lot of other great resources and information that we will be offering during this series.
Thank you everyone for joining us. This is, if you're sitting there thinking, I'm not sure, I heard a lot of things that interest me, but I don't know how to do this still. That is exactly what we created the Garden for Wildlife webinar series for. So it is starting March 1st. That's when classes begin. And registration for those classes will start on December 1st. And that's when we're going to be opening registration. You may want to go back to your community and find out if you and somebody else maybe would want to go on behalf of your community and learn from this. We are going to be gearing things towards communities this time around. And so there's just going to be a lot of information. I'm going to repeat some things that Kristen said. We're going to be talking about native plants. We're going to be talking about invasive removal. We're going to be talking about landscape design. There's going to be so many different topics, and we'll go through, one by one and really give you a really good foundation to bring back to your community. If you'd like to give this a try, keep your eye on the Facebook and Instagram posts and the New Jersey Audubon website. That's where we will be announcing the open registration, and you can look for that on or around December 1st. Thank you everyone for coming.